Hi Rohan, if you could just walk us through your profile, like what is your background, how many years of experience, that would be great.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, I graduated from my engineering in 2014. Post which I started working at Cisco. I worked there for about 2 years, 2 months. Uh, it was a good experience. I wanted to start in the corporate, in the corporate sector as a software engineer, get a hang of what's out there, and it took me about 2 years to basically become at ease with my skills as well as my experience. Beyond which, what I wanted to do was I wanted to move into the startup sector and sort of get a hang of what I wanted to do going further. So a lot of people at that moment when I was leaving my job from Cisco suggested that you should do an MBA if you want to switch careers. But what I wanted to do was first figure out a niche for myself and then go ahead with the plan. So in 2016, around September, I quit Cisco and I joined this startup for just about 4 or 5 months. So basically, I used this time to invest time into learning a few skills. Picked up a lot of marketing skills. I started working as a growth strategist for a startup. Basically, I was handling sales and marketing, and I sort of found this inclination towards managing the product rather than just doing the marketing or sales aspect of it. And Just about 5 months later, I was offered a job from a startup called Yellow Ant, which is
Mhm.
exactly in the sector I wanted to get into, which is in the AI sector. So that's also where I currently work, and I started working there as their first employee, that too. So that was a huge risk for me, coming from a MNC and then going ahead and joining a startup as the first employee. So we started out as a team of three people, including myself and the two founders. And
Mhm.
presently we have about 20 employees. We have partnered with Microsoft, and we also have some of the leading the IT services companies as our clients. So this starting from a team of three people and growing a company, growing a business, trying to grow a brand, this taught me a lot. So over the course of the last 2 years, I have faced a lot of issues as well, and while trying to come up with a lot of things, because we were the only three people, I got really involved in the marketing and sales as well. And that's when I realized that the my foundation of the business skills, right, they are a bit lacking because I never had any formal experience in that.
Mhm.
And going forward, I would like to work as a product manager again, is what I figured, at least in the beginning. But what I wanted was, before I go ahead with that, I wanted to concretize my foundations of marketing or business strategy, and that's how my decision to do an MBA started. So yeah, so I started with so obviously the first step to that is answering the GMAT, and I think the first time I visited Crack Verbal was in January of 2018, and in March is when I joined the classes. I took like a month, like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna chill for a month and then I'm gonna get started with my GMAT. So I started the classes. So one of the best things that happened after joining Crack Verbal was, uh, within 2 weeks I got into that mindset. No, okay, this is GMAT. I need to prepare for it, and that was the key. That was one of the reasons I actually joined Crack Verbal. So I joined. First, I attended the demo class. I really liked it, and I was pretty sure about joining it. And that whole mindset really pushed me towards answering the GMAT. I answered the GMAT first in June, which was about 4 months after my preparation started, and it didn't go as planned. It was not horrible, but I got a 650 on my first GMAT, and basically I had learned all the all the required things for the GMAT. What I didn't do was get into the nitty gritties of where I was making the mistakes, and what can I improve further. So I spent about 2 months, 2 months doing that, and then on in September I answered it, and I got a, like, it was okay. It was a 680. I was not very happy with it, but I was very sure about my profile. So what I haven't discussed here is that beyond my work, I have about 7 years of community services. I've been involved in community services for almost 7 years now, and it was not something which I had planned to, use in my application or something. It came to me very naturally right from my college days. So when I was in Cisco, I used to be a very active member of the CSR. So I was awarded the silver gold badge 2 consecutive years. After which I joined an NGO called Becoming I Foundation. I started out as a volunteer, and right now I'm the city head of Bangalore. So that also really helped me, understand that, I like being in dynamic environments, and I like being around people, and I like having control over things that I do. So this, and combined with my interest outside of these two things, I also freelance as a photographer from the last couple of years. So I just figured that, if I could present an application that sort of uh, involves all of these things, or at least two of these things, very like nicely, and sort of wraps my profile into a more, you know tempting manner, then I can just overcome the 680 barrier, which can be a barrier, especially coming from an Indian background. It does pose a problem sometimes. So I just I just decided to go ahead and apply to a few colleges which I really wanted to go to. And I thought, if it doesn't go fine, I always have another year. I can prepare again. I can improve on my GMAT. But like, we're having this call, so everything went fine from that end. And the application coming to the application process, uh, I started out by analyzing my profile in a I used 3 ways. I was trying to look at it from 3 aspects. One was my career, one was community services, and one was my creative pursuits, because these three things are the most important things in my life, like, generally speaking, not for an application as such. So if you were to talk to me outside of all this also, I'd probably tell you the same things about me. So I started by making a list of all the things that are required for to write an essay, and I even spoke to one of the consultants at Crack Verbal once, just to come narrow down on the colleges. And my geographic preference was Canada, so I just went ahead and applied to the top three colleges that are in Canada. So it was Rotman, Schulich, and McGill, which is DeSautel Faculty of Management. And Rotman is a sought after school, so I was not very positive about that. And as expected, I did not get in there. But the application process was really good. Like, I really loved all the three application processes. And I think I'll get into the details if after, like, I just give you a brief about all this. The application process took about, I think, 2 months. And it turned out to be more hectic than studying for the GMAT, because that's when you really need to think about, okay, first of all, who am I, what am I doing here? So you like, literally started from scratch and started building the application slowly. And I realized a lot of things about how it's important to research on the college and make sure applying to the right place in the first place, because you don't want to end up in the in the wrong college, because you just thought it was good but it was not a fit for you. So other than that, I spoke to a lot of alumni, and that sort of gave me a really good overview of all those colleges. And yeah, so after that, the interview processes were pretty smooth. And usually people have had told me that business interviews are pretty straightforward, and they are pretty casual, but not casual at the same time. So I treated it that way. I prepared very natural. I didn't prepare answers, I just prepared myself for the interview. So I just knew, it's like, just know your stuff, and it'll go fine. If you have answers, if you have reasons for everything, your answers will come up automatically. So I treated it that way. And both the interviews went pretty well, the Schulich and McGill interviews. And I, in fact, got the acceptances within 2 days of the interview from both the colleges.
Okay. So what were the typical questions in the interview that you faced?
Yeah, so here's the thing. McGill and Schulich are pretty different colleges in the way that they approach the whole application process. So what I felt was Schulich wanted to know more about my career. And they, in fact, their essays were also revolving around that. What do you want to do after you're done with your MBA, and why do you want to do it from Schulich? So it's a very straightforward question. You can't add any fluff to it, and it's like very straightforward. Only 350 words. Basically, you're just telling them, and that's it. So the interview was sort of Schulich interview was sort of a extension of that. So they asked me very career-oriented questions. They asked me about my interest, and then interest in my careers, not in general. They also asked me, what I learned over the years working in a startup as well as the MNC. And then when I told them that, I'm from the AI industry, then they wanted to get into a little bit into depth of, what I feel about the industry. And they asked me a few questions about that. I think that was a question just to see how I respond to it. I don't think they were really interested in the industry as such. So yeah, and then they asked me a couple of questions about my work life, and that was pretty much it. It was just a 21-minute interview to be precise. Coming to McGill, McGill had given us three essays, and they were all in-depth, 500 words, and all career-oriented. So my biggest worry was in the interview. Sometimes you have to go one step ahead and tell them more, but the essays were so in depth that I was just wondering what they're going to ask. So I had the interview with the associate director of the admissions committee, and she basically started by saying that let's keep all your work stuff aside and tell me about you. Tell me everything about you outside of your work. So we started with that, and then we obviously came back to my experience at the startup. And I think this was a more open-ended question where they did not have a checklist of things they wanted to know. So as I was answering the questions, the follow-up questions were coming up. So if I spoke about the startup, we had a short discussion about how startups helps groom MBA candidates, and that was a hectic 53-minute interview. And but it was super chill. Like everything went really smoothly, and it was I could genuinely feel that they were interested in every aspect of my life. Like we discussed from photography to my community work to my travels and specific travels. So we got really into the depth of everything. And if you ask me, one common thing that they both were looking for was what I've learned be- uh, what I've learned over the years because I shifted from Cisco to a startup. So moving from a company with say 75,000 people to a company with three people is a huge risk, and it obviously changes everything in your life. So both the schools wanted to know my reasons for it and wanted to know how that helped me, develop my skills and prepare me for my MBA as well.
Okay, okay. Awesome. So that was quite comprehensive, Rohan. So one more thing, because we are at this time where most of the people are starting their GMAT preparation, especially when it's February. Same time last year, maybe you are completely into the same mindset, right? Thinking of preparing for GMAT. Can you just go slightly more detail into your GMAT journey, which is, what was your thought? What do you think you could? What do you think you did? And what do you think you should have done better? Or if you could do it over again, maybe how would you do it better this time?
Okay, so uh, I think one of the mistakes that I made in the beginning was like a lot of people do that. I took it way too seriously actually. When I started out, I was stressing out. I was like, oh shit, there's this exam coming up. I really need to, buckle up and study. And that sort of made me a little nervous. And that was not the right way to approach GMAT, because to begin with, GMAT is an exam where you're supposed to stay calm. So what I would advise everybody is to stay calm throughout the process of the preparation as well. It's never about the number of questions that you solve. That was another mistake that I did in the beginning of my prep, where I was just sometimes I would sit down and do 100 questions every day for 2 weeks straight, but I would never go into depth and analyze why I need to do 100 questions a day, because I'm not satisfied with what I'm doing the last day. And that was the first mistake that I made during the first GMAT that I answered. But when I gave it the second time, what I was doing was I was only answering 25 to 30 questions a day. This is my strategy. I'm not advising anybody to do this. Everybody needs to find their own. So I was doing less of the questions, but I would sit and analyze all the answers properly. So it's a very important thing that when you solve a question, you are like, okay, this is the right answer, but you should also know why the other four are the wrong answers, because they sort of teach you a lot of things. So basically, every four questions that are wrong, four of the things that you learn new, and you make sure you don't make those mistakes in other questions. So this is what I was doing for quant. I would really advise everybody to practice as much as possible, though, just to get that speed, because quant is essentially not difficult. This is coming from a guy who's not good at math. So quant is not difficult. Uh, I just kept practicing as much as possible. If there are any weak spots, like for me, probability is my weak spot. So just analyze and see how much of that is in GMAT. So maybe it's one or two questions, and you don't really need to go in depth into probability. Just make sure you know the basics and sort of handle the basic questions if it comes up on the GMAT. So with the new GMAT pattern which started last year, you don't have a lot of bandwidth to leave questions or guesswork. So it becomes even more important to be just in touch with every aspect of the quant syllabus as well. For quant, it's practice, 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 just to get that speed and accuracy. So I had gone up to 51 in every of my mock tests that I was answering, but still ended up with the 48 in the end, and which was fine. But yeah, so it's like I think if I would have practiced further, and I think for quant, if I would have just kept myself more calm and not kept reminding myself that I'm not good at math, I would have done better in the GMAT. The first time also, I was like, oh, it's the math section. What am I gonna do? And that sort of threw me off, and I just messed up a few of the questions here and there right from the beginning. So I knew. I think by the third question, I knew that this GMAT is. I will have to answer it again, but I still went ahead and answered it. So you can feel it, and for verbal, it's basically analyzing your mistakes and narrowing down. Why am I not getting better at it? It's easy to some people start at 25, 28. Also, it's easy to push it to 33, 34. Beyond that, I felt that you really need to get into the very details of why you are making such mistakes. And since a lot of us talk in a very casual manner, it sort of flows into the uh, exam as well, and we need to fight that urge to not let our personal preferences get into uh, the verbal section, and just stick to the GMAT English is what I say. And GMAT English is beautiful because it teaches you so many things. Because nowadays, every time I say a statement, I analyze it like, hey, was that correct according to GMAT? And then I make. So one thing I always used to do was I always used to say and also, and on the GMAT it's a sin to say and also together. So now I don't do that at all. So it's treat it more casually, not like you were preparing for, say, your IIT or something, and keep it a little, just it's about consistency and basically analyzing your mistakes and staying calm. If these three things can be done, I think anybody can nail the GMAT. For me, the other problem was, since I'm working in a startup, I was still working 10 hours a day, and beyond that, I have to study again. So one other advice that I give people now is, wake up in the morning, study, and then start your day, rather than being like, I'm going to go to work, come back and study at night, because that does not go as planned. So I feel like uh, yeah. And if I would like openly say, this crack verbal has helped me a lot into getting into that mindset or in the first place. The classes were really nice, because especially the quant class were really enjoyable, which I was initially not planning on taking. But now if anybody comes to me, I just say that take the whole thing, and even their mock exams, and just go ahead with the preparation. Beyond that, one other mistake that I made was, I was preparing from a lot of sources in the beginning also. So I was answering Veritas tests and any free test that I could find, which is supposed to be a good thing, but you need to know which ones you're answering. Do your research on which ones are the reliable ones, because if you go, you're like, oh, today I'm going to start my GMAT prep, and I'm going to answer a Manhattan test. You want to come down in your prep just like that, because it's a difficult test. You score much lower than the usual. So That, I think, yeah, that stick to the GMAT official test is what I would say. The 6 tests that you pay for are totally worth it. So, yeah, I think that's about it.
Cool, cool. That's amazing. So, Rohan, one last question, right? So now that you have an admit
Yeah,
and your course commences sometime later this year, right?
starts on August 1st. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your plan? Like next 7 to 8 months, are you preparing for, doing some kind of pre-prep for your MBA?
So basically, as I said, so okay. First of all, I'm also relaxing a lot. I'm traveling next month. I'm going out of country for a bit. Two things that I'm doing, especially for MBA and preparing myself for whether it's Toronto or Montreal, wherever I end up, is one is I just looked up 4 free courses, which will brush up my marketing skills, my business strategy, finance, and a little bit on the I think international business side. It's not a certification. It's nothing. It's for my personal, preparation. That when I reach over there, I'm not totally blank about what am I gonna do in marketing. What are these terms that are coming up? So I'm just it's like I think all the courses that I've signed up are about 4 to 8 weeks. So it's obviously up to me to prepare it. And I'm still working till end of April. I'm still at my job till end of April. Beyond which, I think I'll have more time to just sit back, relax, and sort of read up more as much as possible. I'm actually moving to Canada in June itself. I'm moving about 1.5 months before I even start my program. That's basically to sort of get at ease with the place, as well as start networking with the people over there. And I already know a bunch of people in fact in both the cities, so I don't see a problem. Other than that, they have offered, since Montreal, if I go to McGill, since Montreal is bilingual, so they are offering free French classes from July. And they said that if you just come here, you'll first of all you'll get used to the classroom atmosphere, you'll get used to the McGill atmosphere. So if I go there, I might end up taking that as well, so I can get into the mindset of studying as well, because it has been five and a half years since I last was in school. So yeah, I think nothing specific, just a little bit of brush up on these basic topics, which I have never had any formal education in.
Okay. So last question, any tips on managing finances for an MBA?
Yeah, so I would say that being safe is really important. You just don't want to one of the reasons I like not studying in the US had many reasons for me. One of the reasons was almost every good MBA program over there for us Indians goes beyond 1 crore, which is a huge investment, right? And you have to analyze the risks about risk of what can go wrong. So how do you analyze the risk? Is you look at the worst case scenario. What happens if I am in the worst case scenario? What happens if I don't get a job over there? What if I'm sent back from there? Or not just US, anywhere. So because the Europe market is also a little, sometimes you end up with not getting a job for 6 to 9 months also. So you don't prepare yourself just for the MBA finances, but what you're going to do, say 3 to 9 months beyond the MBA also. So I I was very happy to secure a scholarship from McGill. So that sort of just to start out, it's a small amount, but it's helping me quite a lot. So even like 30% of your tuition is a huge amount in MBA. So I would say that analyze the risks you're willing to take. How long are you willing to commit to? Suppose you do an MBA and get a job that you don't like. Now you're not in a position that, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, but for you have to do it for the next couple of years just to pay off your debt. Considering that you have debt, which most of us do end up with doing an MBA. So apart from that, there are strategies to approach finance also, which is something that you should get into after you are into a program. So you start. I'm taking a loan over here because it's hard to show that much liquid assets in the first place. So, but I do have plans of refinancing it once I have enough credit score in Canada, and it's something that you shouldn't be too worried about as long as you're confident about the school you're going to. So if you go to the right school, you end up studying properly, you end up receiving a job because you did everything properly. So ideally, you should also end up securing a job. In that case, if you just do everything not because you had to, but because you wanted to, you just make this whole process smooth. So you're not paying off your debt like, oh, I have to pay money, and it's like something. It's like you owe it because you got so much out of it. So I approached it that way. Apart from that, I think you guys also cover a lot of these details in your sessions. So, in fact, I have read up on a lot of crack verbal stuff as well while I was looking up on Prodigy Finance and comparing Prodigy Finance, outside banks, Indian banks. So I just did that analysis. It's like choose the best possible route for yourself, and try to keep the pressure as much as possible off your parents. Is
Yeah.
something I would also say, because I worked for 5 years. I have I also have my savings in place. So I do plan to work in Canada as much as possible throughout my MBA also, and I have also discussed that with the adcom. So I would also say look for a course where you have a little bit of flexibility in doing other things, so that you can even like little bit of money is flowing in, at least your living expenses are being taken care of. So even if it's like 200 $300 a week, you're still getting something into your pocket, and it's relieving a little bit of pressure off your post MBA journey as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's how I approach. So this was one of my major factors in taking the decision as well. That how will I handle the finances. So uh, for me, it was just being in the right environment and right mindset throughout the process.
Right, right. Cool. So thank you so much, Rohan. I think this is immensely valuable. I'm sure everybody is going to get inspired, and all that you said was completely to the point, and perfectly makes sense for anyone who's preparing for their GMAT and their MBA.
Yeah.
So looking forward to be in touch with you, even once you go there, so that we can be in touch, and you can also help students going forward to whoever's
I
looking
would love to do
doing an
that.
MBA later in their career. Cool. So all the best. Thank you so much once again, and really, really thanks.
Call
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.